أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله قولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله، وإن خير الهدي هدي محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. أما بعد، يا أيها المسلمين يا عباد الله, all thanks and praises due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Indeed, we glorify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we seek His mercy, His blessings, and we beg for His forgiveness. I testify to the absolute fact that there is no deity, no one worthy of any deification except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for He is indeed alone and has no partners, and whomsoever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides, none can lead astray, and whomsoever He left astray, none can provide guidance to. And I further attest to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is indeed the last and final messenger. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَاكَ إِلَّا رَحْمَةً لِلْعَالَمِينَ. He was sent as a mercy, as a compassion, as a benefactor, as an intercessor to all of creation. في يوم القيامة. My dear beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, قال الله تعالى في كتاب الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. قال الله تعالى في كتاب الكريم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وما أبرئ نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي إن ربي غفور رحيم. قال الله تعالى في كتاب الكريم: لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بنفس اللوامة. قال الله تعالى في كتاب الكريم: يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. قال الله تعالى في كتاب الكريم ونفس وما سواها صدق الله العظيم. My dear beloved brothers and sisters, if I should recite to you every ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the nafs, then I would have to cover 250 different ayahs in the Quran al-Kareem to highlight the nafs of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions repeatedly in Al-Quran al-Kareem, that if I propose the question to you today, what is the greatest battle, or which is the greatest battle according to Islam, perhaps you may say it is the Battle of Badr, or maybe it's the Battle of Uhud, where the Prophet ﷺ was hurt in that battle, where the companions disobeyed the Prophet ﷺ in his order to stay their posts, and because of that disobedience comes the consequences of hurting the Rasulullah ﷺ. Or it's the Battle of Khandaq, which took about 28 days, where the Prophet himself was digging the trench. Or the Battle of Khaybar against the Jews. Or the Battle of Hunayn, where the numbers of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions were many, 10,000 against the people of Thaqif. But according to the Quran, the greatest battle is the battle that was not fought with a sword, it was not fought on a battlefield. The greatest battle according to the Quran never said it's Badr or Uhud or Khandaq. The Quran says the greatest battle was fought with a pen and paper. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. Despite what the world says, this is the fact of Islam, that the greatest battle was the Battle of Hudaybiyah, a battle engaging in a treaty where some of the scholars says that we see today, because of the lack of articulation and intelligence, we resort to dropping 2,000 bombs and 4,000 bombs, and now on its way we have anti-ballistic missile to destroy another nation. Islam saying the greatest battle is what the United Nations failed to. It's what the greatest nations across the globe failed. The greatest battle. And if we should take the lesson from this battle, let's engage with these warmongers. Let's enter into a treaty with them. Let's say, like what the Prophet ﷺ says to the Quraysh, let's engage in no war, no killing, no fighting, no mutilating of bodies, no raping of women, no plundering of children, no sniper in the head of children. Let's engage in a treaty for 10 years on the Muslim side and on the other side. No fighting. That was the agreement, the greatest battle. But yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ says, greater than that, it is a battle within ourselves. Greater than the greatest battle, according to Al-Quran al-Kareem, Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, second to that greatest battle, is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the help of Allah to open Fath al-Makkah, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ. Better than that, it is this battle within ourselves. This nafs. And we see this is a disease among humanity today. That we see that no one is held accountable for their actions and the insight of the nafs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that He created all of us. But before He created this human race that we see today, that we see 8 billion people across the globe, and we see more to come until the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that all of us across the globe come from one common origin. And every khatib have to recite that before they deliver the khutbah every Friday. Ya ayyuhan nas, O mankind, addressing all of humanity. In every khutbah, the khatib must begin with that. Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida wa khalaqa minha zawjaha. That, O mankind, you all come from that one common origin. Whether you like it or not, whether you reject this creation of one origin or not, we all come from Adam alayhi salam. We all come from Adam alayhi salam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, next He created His consort, His match, His mate, Hawa. And from that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you take the name of Allah and demand the rights of each other. Fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again, fear Allah for the relationship that comes from the womb. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established in the Quran that all of us come from this one common origin. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after He created Adam alayhi salam, from the soul of Adam came all of the ruh. Every single ruh. The ruh that is in that killer, it came from Adam alayhi salam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established this again. The first origin is Surah Nisa. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes to Surah Al-Araf. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. And Allah asked every soul in the primordial state, am I not your Lord? أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ. Rhetorically, am I not your Lord? And we answer in the affirmative, yes, indeed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I just want to clarify this so that when you raise in front of me on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, there's no doubt in this. We answer in that affirmative. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that from there on, when you enter into the womb of your mother, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the initiation of creation is from the Suhul of Adam alayhi salam. So the initiation, Allah is telling us of complex science that no human being come into creation except with the what? With the nutfa of the father. The nutfa that comes from the back of the father, that enters into the womb, that becomes an alaka, and becomes a mudghah, and becomes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He formed this bone, and then He clothed its bone with flesh. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it's 40 days, and a similar period, 40 days, and then another 40 days of the mudghah, and then Allah sends the angel to put the ruh in the womb of your mother, in this body, in the Ar-Rahman. So the first phase of the ruh is Alimul Arwah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that the ruh has different phases, but the nafs has different states. The first phase of the ruh is Alimul Arwah. The second phase of the ruh is in the womb, in the Arham of our mother. So that ruh is in the mother's womb, in that baby now, for about 250 days. That is the second phase of existence. And the third phase of existence of this ruh is like you're sitting here today, body and soul. You're here, body and soul, listening to this khutbah. But when you leave the womb of your mother, something interesting happens. In order for you to understand this world, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to ascribe certain senses to you. As you come out from the womb of your mother, the first of the 5 senses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed in that fetus is the sense of touch. Subhanallah. That without this sense of touch, survival at a fetal stage, at an infant stage, is impossible. The sense of touch. That we see documented cases where doctors in the United States pronounce a baby dead at birth. And because of touch, the baby becomes alive. You see this. A few years ago in California, there was a mother gave birth in the hospital, and the doctor pronounced the baby dead at birth. The doctor left the room. The mother asked the nurse, can I have my baby before you take her away? Can I hold her? So she said, okay, she gives her the baby to hold. The mother held the baby on the chest and patting the baby, and the baby began to breathe. Touch, subhanallah. The baby began to breathe. The mother says to the nurse, my baby is breathing, can you call the doctor? The nurse says, this always happens. You know, the baby died, this is post-mortem and all of this. Can you please call the doctor? Reluctantly, the nurse ran into the lobby, called the doctor. The doctor says, you know what's happening there. Just leave it alone. Let her hold the baby for some time. And the nurse came back to the room and saw the baby was breathing. She went back to the doctor and says, "Doc, the baby's breathing." The first sense of the 5 senses is touch. And the second sense is a sense of what? That which you can touch, that which you can hold, it has form, but it doesn't have, you can't tell the color, you can't tell the shape, but you can touch and feel it. So the first senses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to you is the stronger of the 5 senses. It's a sense of input. It's a sense that you begin to understand the world, the sense of sight. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala follow the sense of sight. It's a sense of smell and the sense of hearing. You can listen to the Quran at a very early age. You can listen. You can learn an entire language without you knowing how to read. The most powerful form of learning is orality. Remember the Prophet ﷺ, he never read the Quran. He listened to Jibreel and he mastered the Quran just by listening. This is a skill that mankind, we lost this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says the next sense to follow after the sense of hearing is the sense of smell and then the sense of taste. And then you're here now in body and soul. But the question is that it is in this body and soul, what happens in the third state of body and soul is that when you go to sleep tonight, Allah will remove the soul from the body. Allah will remove the soul from the body. Just like death. هو الذي يتوفاكم بالليل ويعلم ما جرحتم بالنهار ثم يبعثكم فيه ليقضى أجل مسمى ثم إليه مرجعكم ثم ينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what will happen tonight is that the next phase of soul and body, Allah will remove the soul, yatawaffa, at night. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I know everything you did in the day with body and soul. How many lies you've spoken, how many people you've hurt, what your road rage coming to the masjid. I know everything that the soul did, body and soul. And this is a ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is removing the soul because you're thinking that body and soul is the most powerful form of existence. That body and soul, this is consciousness, isn't it? You're conscious here. You can listen to the khutbah. What is it? Is this the most powerful form of existence? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala separates the body from the soul. And the soul is able to do things that create physical changes in the body while those 5 senses that Allah gives to the baby is suspended. Because if you're smelling, you're not sleeping, right? If you can taste, are you sleeping? If you're hearing, can you sleep? So Allah suspends the 5 senses that He gives to you to understand this world in sleep. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped the soul, and the body is still going through physical changes. And the soul is able to traverse different realms. The soul now is in this barzakhi realm, not in this dunya realm. You know, I was just reading a few mornings ago, thinking about this topic. And I read in the Battle of Badr, and we all know this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he spoke to the people, the Quraysh, that lay dead in the battlefield. He spoke to them. And he said, did your Lord grant you what He promised you? Did Lat and Uzzat and Manat and all these false gods, did He grant you what they promised you? And Umar radiallahu ta'ala came and tapped the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, says, Ya Rasulullah, you're speaking to the dead as if they can listen to you, they can hear you. And Rasulullah says to Umar, this is Umar. This is not any ordinary person. This is Umar in body and soul. And the Prophet says, Ya Umar, they can hear me better than you can. He's in body and soul. This is only soul. And the Prophet says, they can hear me better than you can. Umar. The exception is they can respond. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us that at night He removed the soul. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in a complementary ayah, in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah yatawaffal anfusa hina mawtiha. And then He removed the soul permanently from the body at death. Allah yatawaffal anfusa hina mawtiha. والتي لم تمت في منامها فيمسك التي قضى عليها الموت ويرسل الأخرى إلى أجل مسمى. Subhanallah. No psychology book, no science. As a matter of fact, no science can able, from now until the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah, they can come up with whatever artificial intelligence. They can never master the knowledge of the Ruh. Because the Jews, this is what they used to delegitimize Rasulullah. Their question of the Ruh. They said, go ask him. Yes, ask him about the Ruh. And if he tells you that he knows about the Ruh, he's not a prophet. Yes, this knowledge of the Ruh is with my Lord Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No science. This is not an organic substance like the body is. The body is created from dirt, from turab, from teen. You know, the jinn has this creation, the angel has this creation. But the Ruh, what is the creation of the Ruh? The Ruh is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like the Quran says, it is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that the Ruh is in these different phases. And we know at the time of death, when the Ruh is going to leave this dunya and goes where? Into the barzakhi state. You know, I was giving this dars, and one of the sisters called me and says, you know, Brother Shaffieq, what about the Ruh of the prophets? Where are the Ruh of prophets? After, are they in the barzakhi world? Where's the Ruh? Where's the Ruh of your grandfather who passed away? Your grandmother? In that barzakhi world, in that realm, where the Ruh have access to this realm, but we don't have access to that realm except in the state of dreams. So where's the Ruh? We know for sure, according to the Miraj, that we know that the Prophet ﷺ met some of the prophets in the heavens. He met Adam alayhi salam in a sama dunya. So we know Adam is there. We know Adam alayhi salam is there. Then when he went to the second heaven, he met the two cousins, Isa ibn Maryam and Yahya. We know they're there. Well, the question is Isa in the Ruh form or is it a body Ruh form? But we know for exception, all of them. Yahya, we know that when he entered into the third heaven, he saw Yusuf alayhi salam, so he's there. So the prophets are in the heavens. But where are the Ruh of us, our fathers and grandfathers who passed away? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at night, when he takes the Ruh out, we know that he holds it up in the sama dunya. He says that, just like when he's describing the birds, when the specialists of the birds give their scientific fact that the bird is able to glide and fly and lift, and because of the wing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, that's not what makes the bird fly. Let me tell you what makes the bird fly. أَلَمْ يَرَوْا إِلَى الطَّيْرِ مُسَّخَّرَاتٍ فِي جَوِّ السَّمَاءِ مَا يُمْسِكُهُنَّ إِلَّا اللَّهُ. It is Allah that holds that bird up. That common swift, that bird with 14 inches from beak to tail, and a wingspan of just 12 inches, fly from Japan to the Sahara for 11 months without stopping. Create an EV car to go, you know, we're barely pushing it to 200-300 miles, you know. SubhanAllah, 1 hour of solar power from Allah is sufficient to power this entire human race needs for an entire year. 1 hour. 1 hour. Put things into perspective, mankind. We see that in Japan recently, the scientists, they're able to take the cell from the tail of a mice and create the egg for a female. They create the egg from the tail of the mice, and then from the same mice, they take the sperm and fertilize the egg. Male mice. So from the male mice, they're able to create an entire new mice. So there's a big race now. This is very intriguing science. This is like, satanic science. You know what's going to happen now? A big population of people of these same gender who is saying that, you know what, they're pumping money into this research and saying that now they can take a man, and they're thinking this, they're making this projection that within a couple of years we can take the cell, the skin cell of a man, make an egg, then take the sperm of the same man, fertilize the egg, implant the egg in the man, and the man will give birth to a child. La hawla la quwwata illa billah. La hawla la quwwata illa billah. This is fact. I'm not making this up. This is the time we're living in. This is the time that we're living in. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did this. Why don't you get your own mice and create something? Create your own mice from nothing. Like Allah created Adam alayhi salam. Get your own cell. That's not creating. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a man from dust. Not from another man. He created Adam from dust. Why don't you create something from dust? Create life from dust. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala challenged mankind. Recently, they just mapped the neural system of a fruit fly. When I read this, I thought, sometimes, when you read these science and you have a little understanding of Quran, you always, use the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nasu duriba, mathalun fastami'u lahu, inna alladhina tad'una min dunillah. Oh mankind, you got any power? Create the fly, the fruit fly. They just map the neural connection of a fruit fly. First time, they map the entire brain of a species. Simple form. This is the most simple form of creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to mankind, create the fly if you have to. Bring all of the intellect to create. And forget about it. Don't worry about it. But retraction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, how about if you retrieve the food that the fly can give you? Forget about the fly. You won't be able to do it. There will never be a fly factory. There will be a robotic factory. Have you ever seen a fly factory? Have you ever seen an ankabut factory? A spider factory? Create a fly if you have any power, O mankind. And if you can't create a fly, then try to retrieve the food the fly takes it away from you. You can't do that. You can't take the food that a fly takes from you with all the power you have. With all the power you have. Because when that fly comes on your toes and break that toes, that fly doesn't eat like me and you. What the fly does before he eats the toast, he vomits the enzyme to break down the toast, liquefy it, then sucks it up to something called proboscis, a straw-like substance. Then he take off. Your toast is really toast. You can't get it back. It's not toast anymore. Before the fly leaves the toast, it's not toast. It's liquefied. How did Rasulullah knows this? You can create from the cell of a mice. This is creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He created this ruh. But the question today is that we see that the ruh that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in this state of fitrah, this state of purity, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He sent the angels to blow the ruh. And it's interesting, He talks about the womb of blowing. And when He created Adam alayhi salam, what made Adam Adam? What gives honor to Adam among the angels, among the jinns, and all other creation? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after I created him from dust, and when I blew this ruh in Adam, then I command you to prostrate him because of this ruh. Because of this ruh. So the ruh is in these different phases. But the question today is the nafs. What is the difference between the nafs and the ruh? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this nafs, the state of this nafs, is what's vital for mankind today. What is the state of your nafs? And at times you can tell, right? You can make a spiritual diagnosis. Why can't we? You say you can't judge people, but we can make clinical diagnosis. Doctors can make clinical diagnosis. If you come into the clinic and you have phlegm and you have a low-grade temperature and you're coughing, you have some tightness in the chest, we can say clinically before we do an x-ray or anything, you have upper respiratory infection. We can make those diagnoses. So we can make a diagnosis in a person's nafs. What level is that person's nafs? When a person can leave the masjid and go and argue and use profundity, you can say clearly his nafs is amara. It's the lowest state. Because a person with a nafs that is mutma'inna will never behave like that. So you can make a spiritual diagnosis of where a person is by his behavior. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this amara nafs, it's an inciting nafs. It is the nafs that's prevalent in the world today. It's a nafs that will slaughter children with no accountability to anyone. It's a nafs that will do whatever it wants to do. It's a nafs that will speak to the body of law and say, I don't care what arrest warrant you have for me. I don't care what the legal 15 of the 17 judge is making adjudication. I don't care what happens. I'm going to invade another nation and slaughter women and children. It is that nafs. That is the inciting nafs that's prevalent in the world today, whether it's a geopolitical level or within our own masajids, our own homes. This inciting nafs, that the characteristic of an inciting nafs, of an amara, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us a vital lesson in Surah Yusuf. No wonder that is the surah that is the only complete surah in the Quran, because it addresses one of the most important matter in human existence, in the nafs. That when Yusuf alayhi salam went to prison, and they went to him to give him the most prestigious position, the treasurer of the state of Egypt, he says, no, before I take that position, go and ask Zulaykha what really transpired in that house. Clear my record before I take this position. They went to ask the woman. And here Allah is going to teach us one of the most profound lessons that I challenge all of you in your psychiatry and psychology book, to give me this insight what Allah is going to unfold in the pages of Al-Quran al-Kareem, in Surah 12, in Ayah 53. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ إِلَّا مَا رَحِمَ رَبِّي إِنَّ رَبِّي غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Subhanallah. That this woman, the most beautiful woman, a woman of power and position, is accepting her wrong that day. What day will you accept your wrong? What day will you come clean to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say, Ya Allah, I've done wrong, and you say that you're the most forgiving Rabb, so I come to you today. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. That, Ya Allah, I'm not making any excuse today. Like what I did a few years ago, I lied and I put an innocent man in prison. Like we see, the man, an upright human being that was killed unjustly by death row a few weeks ago. Why? Perhaps because he declared Kalimatu la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That is only because the killed family is saying exonerate him. Subhanallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this woman says that, Ya Allah, I'm not making any excuse today. I'm not going to exculpate myself or absolve myself from what I've done to that Yusuf alayhi salam, that I raised him as a child in my house as a foster mother. But that day, I was only thinking about myself. Nafsi, nafsi. Nafsi, nafsi. Only myself I'm thinking about, my desire. I would start the faculty of the nafs, and any given time, right now you're in one of those faculties. The faculty of the nafs is 4. One is reasoning. That woman was using her reasoning faculty, right? She saw Yusuf. He's thinking, then she started using her imagination. What it would be like with Yusuf. Don't we? Aren't we always in that state? What it would be like. You're on the subway, you see somebody of the opposite gender, you're looking, what it would be like. You're comparing, you start using your reasoning faculty. You say in your imagination. The second faculty of the nafs. Then you start using your desire. The third faculty of the nafs. And then the fourth faculty is anger. You get anger when you don't get what you want. Because you want to satisfy this need, this desire of yours. It's only about me, my people. I'm better than you. Ana khayrun minhu. This is an Iblisiya state. The nafs amara is an Iblisiya state. Because this is what Iblis says. That I am better than you. Ana khayrun minhu. I am a Zionist. I'm a Jew. I'm white. I'm this. I'm better than you. You're black. You're American Indian. You're so and so. Ana khayrun minhu. Khalaqtani min nar wa khalaqtahu min tin. This is the seed of all this destruction we're seeing. That this nafs sits in this state. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us. That is the characteristic of this inciting nafs is one of what? Takabbur. You know, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Iblis, subhanallah, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ. What? That Iblis at that moment, he waxed himself with pride and refused the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't that what we're seeing today? Isn't that what we're seeing across the globe? This pride, this arrogance that we're seeing, that is causing so much of the plight, the malaise of society today because of this inciting nafs. So this woman taught us this valuable lesson of the nafs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you look at the flip side, if you think that you can function without the connection of Allah to control this nafs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Shams. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, I was looking at a social media post, and there's a young English woman, probably under 30 years old, who embraced Islam. She embraced Islam, very articulate, very intelligent, and you only see this among these people. Wallahi, you go on social media, you only see it among these Caucasian, these Western people, that when they come to Islam, I've never seen a Muslim person says, I read Surah Shams, and it was the most amazing. I couldn't put it down. And after the first ayah, she was like, it's amazing what I'm reading. I had to put it down after the first ayah. The insight what she was able to get. I said, subhanallah. She was, and I could relate to her because when I read Surah Shams, I have that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا تَهَا وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. He's telling us about all this amazing science that he's swearing by the sun, he's swearing by the moon that follows it, he's swaying by opposite, he's swaying by pairs, and it's not all about the science and astrology and astronomy. Here's what I want you to know. I'm swearing by the nafs. وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. That this nafs that is in you is in a state of sahwa. It's in a state of these four faculties that you're thinking. You're using your reasoning faculty. Don't use your reasoning faculty. Even though you think that's the most powerful form. Remember, that's the first creation to use his reasoning faculty that got him in trouble was who? Was Iblis. He used syllogism, logic, because he said, I'm better than him. Fire is stupid. He used logic. Logic got him to that. Use the faculty of the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah. That's beyond the reasoning faculty. That is beyond the reasoning faculty. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that the state of this nafs is what we should think about. That where are we? Where is the state of our nafs? That even Yusuf, when the Prophet ﷺ asked, who's the noblest of them? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet ﷺ says, it has to be Yusuf. It has to be Yusuf. Yusuf's father was a prophet, his grandfather was a prophet, he came from a lineage of prophet, you know. He was sold into slavery, you know. He, subhanAllah, exhibited the same. He said to his brothers, when they said to him, they came for help, and, you know, subhanAllah, here's so much characteristic of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But Yusuf himself, could not control the nafs on his own. That this nafs intrinsically in a state of sahwa, you're always thinking, should I come to masjid? Should I give some charity today? Should I do this? Or maybe, I need this money for something else. You're always using this reasoning faculty, this imagination. Yusuf is saying that the only way to harness this nafs is to have a relationship with Allah, to bring it into balance. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا, and the whole scene of the surah changed now. Every ayah up until then begins with wa, the conjunction. وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ إِذَا تَلَاهَا وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا جَلَّاهَا وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَاهَا وَالسَّمَاءِ وَمَا بَنَاهَا وَالْأَرْضِ وَمَا طَحَاهَا وَالنَّفْسِ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. That I've given you that ability, O insan, that you can choose to be a nafs of fujur or a nafs of taqwa. You decide, ya insan. You decide. You decide. One of taqwa, of consciousness of Allah, that is what success is. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ. This is what it all matters about. This is what all of this matters about. That is why when the Imam reads Surah, he says what? He says in that surah that it is قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّاهَا. In each salah, it's recommended. Why? It's to bring focus back to the nafs. Where is your nafs today? Where is your nafs today? Is it in a state of ammara? Is it in a state of lawwama? Or a state of mutma'inna? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us that we are in a state of mutma'inna, a state with conditions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ameen. هو الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المحمد العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, bless your family, and pray for all those who are sick in our community, especially our sister Auntie Lily, who is sick as in the hospital. Our brother is sitting right here, always in the masjid. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant her shifa. And all those who are sick among us, please don't forget to lift your hands to the heavens and make dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Make dua for our brothers and sisters in Lebanon and all parts of the world where they're being terrorized and where they're being killed. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make them an exemplar to all of human beings. Make them as an exemplar on the day of Yawm al-Qiyamah. Make them an exemplar that they are people that give testimony to true a nafs that is mutma'inna, a nafs that is returning to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state that is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي.